feedback from people in a way that is useful, meaningful, and actionable. Again, as somebody who's been on the builder side of things, unsolicited feedback often is very useless, or it is framed in a way that is not actionable. Like, I can't do anything with it if someone is saying that I don't like this. I don't know what to do. So what I really think about is how do we construct methods of measurement that really get at the public's perception and real use of these AI systems. So how do you meaningfully create human in the loop? So I wrote a paper a few years ago based on my time at Accenture where we looked at organizationally how you can build a responsible AI, both internally and externally. And structured public feedback, one thing I built during my time at Twitter was the first algorithmic bias bounty. If you're familiar with cybersecurity, the idea of the bug bounty is not particularly foreign, but it had never been brought to code before, where a company actually opened up their code and said, find issues with our code from a perspective of algorithmic bias or discrimination, not just cybersecurity. And if you do, we will, give you prize money, et cetera. So it's the first time that had happened. And then in 2022, I established a nonprofit to literally do this work. So we work with companies, organizations to actually create these kinds of global challenges to solve meaningful problems. Just as an example, we did one last year with the Indian Forestry Service on creating more inclusive reforestation algorithms that would take into account the migration patterns of tribal nomads, which is very, very fascinating work. Structured public feedback, I mentioned earlier, AI assurance, is actually a way of getting good feedback to understand if your model is performing as expected. So one of the issues with generative AI models is that the output is not easily predictable. So machine learning models are mathematical, statistical models. 2 + 2 always equals 4. In generative AI models, the output is probabilistic. So 2 + 2 generally equals 3.5 to 4.5, but sometimes it equals 99. And as a business, it is very, very hard to understand the risk of launching a generative AI algorithm if you don't know if it's going to give useful feedback 100% of the time. So what I've done is built out 3 methods of doing this sort of evaluation. The first, as I mentioned, is bias bounty program. The second that I'm particularly well known for is red teaming. So red teaming similarly is a way of bringing in external experts and individuals to give you feedback on model performance, but specifically testing the model to the edge cases to find problems. And again, this is another practice borrowed by cybersecurity. It's a common practice that there are independent evaluators who can be hired by companies with the sole purpose of testing their models from an external expert perspective. And I'm trying to bring that into AI models. And what we're the most known for is doing the largest ever generative AI red teaming challenge, where about 2,700 people at the cybersecurity conference, DEF CON, were introduced to hack every major large language model. We worked quite closely with the companies too. What I really love is that when we do these evaluation exercises, we work with the model owners because they are constantly trying to improve their models from all sorts of perspectives. In this case, we did it based on the AI Bill of Rights, which was written by the Office of Science, Technology, and Policy, which covered everything from privacy and discrimination to data exfiltration and personal information. But we've also did one with the National Institutes of Standards Technologies where actually anybody in America could give feedback so that NIST could create better AI standards. And that had never been done before. Nobody had ever gone out, given an algorithm to literally anybody on the street and said, give us feedback. And that feedback directly is structured to help us create better standards. So this isn't a survey. This isn't a questionnaire. This is actually getting your hands in the code. And that's actually one of the biggest gifts of generative AI. I mentioned I've been in this field for about 8 years, and until 2022, I would have to explain to people what AI is, because it was such an abstraction. They had never really seen it, or at least they didn't think they had seen it, even if it was behind the scenes making decisions about jobs or mortgages or their child's education. They had never really seen, or they didn't think they had seen algorithm before. So what ChatGPT did is it put AI in everybody's hands. And now people were asking the right kinds of questions. They were asking questions like, why is this often so wrong? Or why is it presenting this situation in a way that I know is factually incorrect? Or I know that the output shouldn't look like that because that doesn't sound, that sounds discriminatory. How do I fix this? How do I improve this? And those are the questions we just certainly want asking. So the average person doesn't often get the opportunity to do this. So that interaction, the ability to interact with this model is something that I want to take and give to everybody in a way that is meaningful. So creating an AI right to repair. How might the average person be part of addressing this kind of AI model's issues? Red teaming is a starting point, but as we think about agentic AI, if we want people to use AI to make decisions on their behalf, then we really do have to think about ways for people to be able to repair the AI systems that interact with them. There's no way the average person will trust an AI to do their grocery shopping for them if it can't tell a banana from an avocado, right? Or if it will spend $5 on a single banana and not make a discernment about what is cost effective or not, right? So this idea of a right to repair is, still a bit of a dream, but it is one that we are working towards. So what's next? Everybody in this room in some capacity is interested in the future of work and human resources. And it is worth your time to invest in understanding AI. Specifically as a productivity tool, I use generative AI to do a lot of tasks. And there are many ways in which I like working with Gen AI, but also recognize that it is meant to augment the work I do and not replace the work I do. And also when we think about deploying AI at your organization, what is the intersections of your pain points and what AI is good at doing, rather than assuming the AI will just automatically be good at anything you want to use it towards? And importantly, how can you use AI to solve problems positively and productively? Thank you so much for your time.